Bethesda responds to Starfield criticism. Hasn't he already used this exact title at least 2 other times? And I know, far be it for me to critique anyone on that point exactly, but at the same time, I'm not the one boasting integrity and moral principle, because I have none.
We're sitting down to talk about Bethesda Game Studios. It's been a little bit since we've chatted about them. Our last video on Bethesda was talking about the future of this game developer, because I imagined after Shattered Space, they'd go quiet for a while. But following Shattered Space, a lot of people...
The future is looking bright. So bright you don't need the eyes to see it. And that's not a good thing for Bethesda. They're a clown show and it's kind of collapsing.
wanted me to talk about Elder Scrolls 6. What's my feel for Bethesda Game Studios moving forward? And I
Very bad. I would be surprised if you could actually legitimately find people who are excited for Elder Scrolls 6 at this point. It is an uphill battle. A miracle needs to happen pretty much at this point for people to be like, yeah, Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a success. That's not happening.
always said it was really defined by how they receive the criticism of Shattered Space and Starfield in turn, where I do think base game Starfield does a lot of great things, but Shattered Space was, I think, a
Well, you and literally no one else, buddy.
reality check moment for Bethesda Game Studios of like, you can't just check all the boxes that your old games do and expect it to work. You have to understand why those things worked. And I broke that down in detail in my review.
Sounds stupid, but in any case, okay, listen. If you're a game company and your initial game gets received like a pile of dog water, okay? To be nice at this point, okay? Just dog water. And everyone hates it, everyone is complaining about it, no one can even find a single system they like about the game. And then you're like, yeah, this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted from our game. People are just stupid and then they don't understand the genius of us, Bethesda. And then your expansion literally quadruples down on everything people hated, and you're still left scratching your head thinking, how could this happen? Shit. I don't even know what to say at that point. You're cooked.
But I think that's really what makes the best developers in our industry. Of course, there is talent, and that is a very important piece of the puzzle, but we're humans. We're going to make...
True, there has not been a piece of talent in Bethesda for at least 10 years at this point. That is true. I unironically fully believe that there is not a single person with talent left at Bethesda.
mistakes. We're going to make bad choices sometimes. And I think it's totally understandable. But when you make those choices, it's about when you have that reflection and you go, okay, what did I do wrong here? What could I have done better? That you take the right lessons from it. And it's also important that in your biggest success,
Yeah, and Bethesda did exactly that and said we didn't make wrong decisions.
you take the right lessons from it. This is something I talked about with my video called How Skyrim Ruined Bethesda, which is, I know for my viewers of my Bethesda content, a video I plug endlessly, and I apologize. I know it's tiresome, but the reason I plug it as often as I do is because I think it's a really important video that shows how Bethesda talked about their games before Skyrim and after Skyrim. Well, Skyrim is one of my favorite
I think that's something we should watch, boys.
games of all time. It is also the moment that Bethesda took the wrong lessons out of what people loved from Skyrim and started to pack that into game after game. And even titles that I love, like Fallout 4, suffered from it a little bit. So today we're talking about what Phil Spencer had to say on behalf of Bethesda Game Studios when it came to Starfield Shattered Space and what Todd Howard believes was the problem with Starfield Shattered Space. And I gotta say, the thought process here is disappointing, as I'll illustrate. And they are not, even if I think you love this DLC.
That is to be expected. You can't ask the blind to lead the seeing.
Taking the right lessons out of the criticism, for better or for worse. So we'll talk about that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today to talk about some Bethesda Game Studios. And before we begin, a quick word from today's sponsor. Gamers, you like good deals, don't you? That's why I'm here to tell you about Instant Gaming. You head over here and you can find some of the newest games. So I got this information from IGN. The article is titled, Todd Howard wondered if Starfield should have delayed buggies for Shattered Space. In an interview with the GameFile newsletter.
Yeah. We know about that one. This is hilarious. Bethesda is unironically sitting there and looking at the Shattered Space disaster and being like, yeah, we should have left buggies But for Shattered Space, that would have saved everything. Unironically, these people are so vapid and stupid that they think that, yeah, the buggies, if buggies were in Shattered Space, everyone would be soy pogging all over the place.
Phil Spencer said, "We're always learning," when talking about how to approach expansions, and mentioned a conversation he had with Howard about the release cadence for content. Howard focused in on the buggy, which was surprise released during game.
Is Phil Spencer, by the way, short? Let's check. Phil Spence. Is that the right guy? No, this is definitely a different guy. Where is his name? In a game of Phil Spencer Xbox. Okay, yeah, that's the right guy. Height. Okay. Phil Spencer height. I can't find it, but I have a feeling he's as short as Todd Howard, and that's why he's buddies with him. Because the weak shall congregate.
Gamescom opening night live ahead of the expansion. Quote, "Todd and I were talking about Shattered Space. Starfield is a game I put a ton of hours into and really love, but they've had this thing where they've added features throughout the year and then they had an expansion," Spencer said. "I think that some of the feedback on the expansion is we wanted more features, and he's like, well, should we have waited to put the buggies out?" End quote. He continued, quote, "And so I think you're trying to tune both development effort and the impact of the expansion. And I think there will always be a balance of managing the game month to month, but not every game will do expansions."
Bro, this is absolute peak lunacy, peak self-servingness, okay? Starfield comes out, everyone is mad about everything. Story's bad, the systems are stupid, the gameplay is boring, everything. Everything is bad about the game. It's boring, it's dull, it's whatever. And in that time, Bethesda managed to add an FOV slider, a need button, which took them roughly 6 months, a buggy, and maps that no one honestly cares about, that no one really likes that much. And the buggy is complete trash because the weapon scaling doesn't exist there and it's stupid, okay? And that's it. And in the meantime, Bethesda has been patting themselves on the back for a giant patch with 4 things fixed, and 3 of them aren't actually fixed. It doesn't work. Okay, that is unironically what's happening here. Bethesda is just lonesome.
End quote. This is terrible. I'm sorry. I just gotta be very blunt about it. This is terrible. This is possibly the worst takeaway. I know a lot of people were like ganging up on Emil Pagliarulo for his response to Shattered Space, but I honestly think it was more well measured than what we're seeing here, right? Because
no,
this is not at all what the problem was. And I will show in a moment what clearly is the problem, but I'll speak for myself first and then show what the public is saying. Look, the problem with Shattered Space is that it checked a lot of the classic Bethesda Game Studios boxes. You can wander in Shattered Space. You have a cool faction in Shattered Space. Like, you have these things.
Cool faction? Those people have tattoos on themselves for no fucking reason. And Andreja doesn't. Their literal culture is based on the premises that anyone can kill anyone at any time and the winner gets, well, fucking everything, as much as I understand. And they're socially inept. This is not a cool faction. This is something a 2-year-old comes up with, trying to create a cohesive story. Okay, it's dull, it's stupid, it's not cool. Okay, again, everyone has tattoos. Andreja doesn't. Like, what the hell?
Things that
they can't even do that. Also, the tattoos are stupid. Someone was literally, okay, we need to make them special. How about tattoos? Yeah, tattoos for no reason. Let's explain nothing about their shitty autistic culture, and there you go. I told you that they're gonna destroy House Varun. The first reason why House Varun was actually like the best, arguably best part of the Starfield lore, wasn't because it was like, Bethesda just didn't flush them out. There was no information about them, and considering how bad everything else was in the game, obviously the thing that exists in the game, but you have no information, only just vague things like they're mysterious, they live somewhere else, they praise the great serpent, and that is it. That is literally it, by the way. Obviously, that becomes the most intriguing part of the game because everything else is just so fucking shit.
Expect from a Bethesda Game Studios title. You do have the dialogue, for example. You can choose what to say, and it's not voiced. Like, it checks all of these boxes. However, none of it is done particularly well. I think Shattered Space highlights that Starfield's traversal, I don't think you can reverse the damage that, for example, even the jetpack does. I didn't need the buggy because the jetpack, I use that way more in the buggy. The buggy feels bad to control, and so I was jetpacking everywhere and not touching the
Yeah, the jetpack is faster. That's the irony of the buggy.
for minutes at a time and just gliding everywhere. I didn't get a moment to take in the world, appreciate what was there. It was boring to explore. And then when you get there, the end result is poor. As I highlighted in my review, a lot of my big problems with Starfield Shattered Space and in turn Starfield was loot and how it was balanced. In the base game in Starfield, you'd go through the awful digipick system to go through a master lock to unlock some randomly generated weapon inside a case. And oftentimes, that weapon wouldn't be good at all. And this is a problem.
Wait, what? That's not even true. I'm sorry. Did you play Starfield even? I have to ask at this point. Okay, one of the greatest achievements that Starfield did, they fucked up so tremendously, literally on every aspect. It's insanity. When you're playing Fallout 3, New Vegas, Skyrim, or literally any other game, whenever you see an easy difficulty lockbox, you're excited because you know that you're gonna get some ammo, a little bit of maybe credits, a stim pack maybe in the early game. Then medium difficulty is also gonna contain exactly what you expect, and the very difficult ones and hard ones are gonna contain the good shit. Okay, but in Starfield, no. A lockbox can be easy, it can contain nothing, and a lockbox can be very hard, and it can contain double the nothing. That is, they somehow even managed to completely F up the RNG for, containers when they are locked. Because there's nothing good in them. It's pointless to even open them.
All throughout Starfield. It's a far cry away from finding like the Chillren during the Thieves Guild quest line, and it's in an expert lock, and you go inside that expert lock and you actually get something unique out of it because you went out of your way to lock pick through that, to go through all these challenges to get to this piece of loot here. Starfield doesn't really respect your time spent looting. They just think you like loot. And this is something I say stems back to Skyrim. In Skyrim, you had the rare weapons and armor. And I know people loved it because I was one of the leads on guides for finding those weapons and armor. It's the reason I'm here today, is because those rare weapon and armor guides did so well that I kind of had a platform of people who loved Bethesda Game Studios games. And in turn, we started talking about Fallout 4.
Wow.
What did they introduce in Fallout 4? Legendary weapons and armor. What did they bring into 76 afterwards? Legendary weapons and armor. In fact, that's the best loot in the game. And what did they carry from that into Starfield? Legendaries again, right? They got away from the loot that made it good. So it's not even that the A to B wasn't really that great in Starfield. It's that when you got to B and you went through B and got to, I guess, C in the loot, that was awful too. So it never felt fulfilling. But more importantly, I think, is that Bethesda Game Studios are, in my opinion, people will disagree with this, and that's fine. They'll give me my raise your standards comments, and that's fine. Do your thing. I think that they can tell a good story. I think Starfield has a lot.
Hell no. Bethesda's long gone in telling good stories. When you tell a poor story, that's one thing. When you understand what you have done wrong, you have the chance to make it right. You have a chance to learn from a mistake. That's what makes mistakes great, because it gives an opportunity for growth. But when we're talking about Starfield, Eliano Pagrulli, or whatever his dumbass name is, the motherfucker literally went on double Twitter tirades at this point, or quadruple Twitter tirades at this point, about how he's the greatest writer to ever live, and Starfield's story is a masterpiece, and everyone who doesn't think like that is stupid. Okay? There is no learning possibility from that. There is only arrogance and self-loathing in that. And that is pathetic. And that is why it's never going to get better. And this same person, this absolute uncontested genius, is going to be making Elder Scrolls 6 story. Have fun with that information.
A lot of great stories in it. Shattered Space is the opposite of that. And I think the worst criticism that Shattered Space has received is people going, oh, it's more Starfield. I'm like, no, because I think base Starfield is a million times better than Shattered Space. At least Starfield I really enjoyed. And I know it had its problems, but when I was questing and talking to people and getting into the factions, getting into the world, there was something there I was enjoying. There were a lot of problems with it, but I was still liking that. Shattered Space I didn't like at all, and I think that says a lot. But Bethesda Game Studios...
Shattered Space, to a degree, is almost the vague illusion of Fugazi, of them trying to learn from their mistakes, kind of, but completely not understanding what the problems were, if they even tried. Because Shattered Space is essentially, it kind of feels like this. Okay, people like choice, right? So let's give them choice. At the end, they get to choose who is going to be leading Varun. And, well, the choice is between three factions who you don't know, you don't understand, there's nothing unique about them, and the choice is meaningless. Okay? That's just effectively someone hearing, oh yes, people like choices, let's give them choices. And the choices are completely vapid.
The fact that they're going and saying, oh, this free content we were giving you, we should have saved that, given you less of that throughout the year, and instead packed it into the expansion. Yes, expansions can have impact in the terms of, like, hey, features being added. For example, you look at what happened with Cyberpunk 2077, and I think they did it really well. You had Cyberpunk 2077 2.0, which basically brought in a whole mess of changes, right? Like, hey, here's vehicle combat. That's a brand new feature. However, that was separate from the expansion, Phantom Liberty. And the expansion, Phantom Liberty, was, you guessed it, just a really great story with reactive choices, a new zone to explore, and new loot. At its core, there was much more there to love. There's a lot of stuff there that's new that you will love about that game, but a lot of it dropped in a free update. And when it came to the expansion itself, I think it was slimmer compared to what was actually offered in the free update alongside Cyberpunk's Phantom Liberty. So when Todd's looking at this and his team's looking at this saying, oh, we could have washed over the criticism by giving you a buggy, it's like, no, I think they're thinking about it on a level of how do you offset negative reviews, like, oh, well, they'll mention the buggy and this will be a feature and it'll kind of wash over the main story, when the real core of the issue was storytelling and exploration not being up to par with their usual quality. And so maybe these are conversations that happen, but when this is the main takeaway that the face of Xbox is saying, like, yeah, this is what we talked about, it just shows a very clear lack of reflection. And look, don't let me speak for y'all. I'm going to do something that I don't like when most YouTubers do, but I think it's important here. We're going to take a look at some Steam reviews. Like, what are the people saying, right? What are they saying? So, come on, come join me. Let's take a look at Starfield chat.
Wait, but people love reading reviews. They're funny.
Shattered Space Steam reviews.
Especially
Let's see what people are
Steam.
saying. Okay, so we're here on Steam. I figured, you know what? I can only speak for myself so much. What are the people saying? What is the problem with Starfield chat?
Well, here you have garbage. If you don't go into this with the expectations of hating because it's Starfield, it's actually pretty good. I'm sorry. I hate these absolute mindless comments. For example, oh, this is Starfield's expansion, and Starfield was bad. Well, if you don't go into the expectations that you're playing Starfield, it's gonna be good. What the fuck does that even mean? How am I supposed to forget that I'm playing Starfield while playing Starfield? Okay? How am I supposed to do that? This is on the same line of, well, if you don't like it, don't play it. Or, why are you critiquing things that you don't like, and I objectively can't say anything good about it or disprove any points that you have? Stop! The weak shall always find a way to be detestful.
Shattered Space for the general public. So let's just read a little bit together. So right here we have one review.
All of these comments always are going to be somehow to frame you as the bad person for having this crazy thing as standards. Yeah, I know. They're gonna try to frame you as the bad person, the unreasonable one, the one that is trying to take away the fun from others because you just simply don't like the game. Okay, listen. If I don't like the game, that's one thing. But how the fuck does that ever make you dislike the game? The only way that you are gonna start disliking the game is if you listen to what someone has to say, and you're like, oh, damn, that person's actually right about this. So you fear that outcome. You want to live in ignorance because ignorance is bliss. And you want to make everyone succumb to the exact same opinion. No, this is not how it's gonna go. We are always gonna call out bad things when they happen. We are not gonna stay silent just for the benefit of some crazy person who can't take even an ounce of responsibility for their actions or is too prideful to change their opinion when confronted with something. This is not how we're gonna do things.
Which says I've played Shattered Space, and some of it is pretty good. However, as an RPG with meaningful choices, it falls flat on its face. You'll join up with several groups in the main game. However, in Shattered Space, you'll see down here, you join the very religious Varun faction to do anything in this DLC, and that's not a choice matter plot. That is what you do when writing a novel. The rest of the DLC follows this pattern. No choices made, really, that reflect on your gameplay. They talk about here how the places of interest are all new. That's very welcome. There's several new dungeons, and the new Varun weaponry and armor is very welcome. But start scanning the large number of fauna on the planet, and you'll find they replicated the creature to each biome and just renamed them. That's lazy development right there. So if you like Starfield, you might like this, you might not, but it's best to wait for a deep discount. So this is someone who is just, I think, being even-keeled, not completely pissed off. I didn't pick out any reviews here that I thought where someone like this just says garbage. It's like, okay, there's just empty.
Valid. It's absolutely valid to just call it garbage. Never be deterred just because someone says, well, you need to do constructive criticism. No, you don't. You're a consumer. If you felt something was garbage, you dislike it, you call it garbage, and that's it. That's it. You don't have to explain yourself. Criticism does not have to be valid. Criticism just has to be there to understand, to make people understand that something's not right. This is not fucking Reddit.
Criticism there, right? This one here says I wasn't going to go in with a negative review, but the ending is what pushed them over the edge. We won't spoil that here. They do run down some of the good. It's more Starfield if you like it. The city's beautiful, which I agree with. It reminded them of Morrowind, and they love Morrowind.
The city's stupid. I have talked about it so much. It doesn't make sense. You have a candle there, a light there, another light on top, a tarp there, a tarp on top of a tarp, and it's just stupid. It just makes no sense. Like, they try to make this fanciful, unknown, ununderstandable environment effectively by introducing a lot of things, but these things just end up making no sense. And even if you create giant megalithic structures, a whole city of that, the city is gonna feel empty unless you fill it up with smaller detail. And what happens when you have no idea what you're doing in this alien-like civilization, effectively, that the Varun are supposed to represent? Well, you can't fill it with anything, because if you fill it with small things, then it's just gonna be a bunch of ununderstandable things. So the only thing that they can do is fill it with boxes and lights on top of lights next to lights next to lights, because you can't do anything else. Otherwise, it's gonna be empty. And if you fill it with, I don't know, like strange triangle, hexagonal objects, no one's gonna understand what the fuck this is. So, because of your ineptitude at creating something unique, something alien, because you probably did not do any research or anything like that, because you superficially believe that cultures are effectively just architecture at this point, which is dumb, even though it's real life accurate. The different cultures have different architecture. For example, a pagoda or an African mud hut. Very distinctly different based on culture. And, well, here they try to do the same. But it doesn't work because you need detail. So you put lights fucking everywhere. It's pathetic. It was an attempt at something, but that something was autism.
Morrowind, there's a couple of pretty good quest lines, and the new extreme difficulty and mods add some challenge. Meanwhile, they say it's just more Starfield if you don't like it, got tired of the red colors. It reminded me of Morrowind, but Morrowind's also 20 years old, and the main story is underwhelming. You'll see here that the review comes down to the story. If you're hoping to learn more about the nature of the Great Serpent, its relationships with the people of Va'ruun, you learn almost zero new information, comparing that to the 5-minute museum presentation in New Atlantis, which is a really good one to point out. Terrain looks the same. The game has some good handcrafted areas, but they're all pretty empty with meaningful objects of interest and cluttered visual noise at the same time, and way too spacious than they actually needed to be. So again, just acknowledging, hey, there's some good stuff here, but for the most part, storytelling, choices, underwhelming. Scroll down a little bit more. You see here this.
By the way, the irony of them making a boring looking city is doubly stupid because of one simple reason. They're supposed to be going through a crisis now, which would actually allow them to fill the city with a lot of different things that do make sense and you don't question it. But instead, again, we got a bunch of fucking tarps, crates, lights, and people who look like it's their everyday life.
This individual is saying it feels like they just cut back a lot of the things that could have made this thing great to save development time. Like, for example, when you do get to House Va'ruun, you see that the place is mostly destroyed. That happened right before you got there. They say it's a poor plot device that was a choice to cut that effort down. The opportunity to build a dark, gritty DLC that the main game hinted at was completely missed. As soon as I saw the glowing vortex enemies, I realized this was going to be worse than a poor filler episode of Lex. But yeah, the new world map is tiny and padded out with desert. Most points of interest.
I have no idea what the Lex is.
Are copy and paste and being separate from the rest of the galaxy. They should have created more unique details to the computers, equipment, and signage. Squint your eyes and you could be on literally any other planet, which is another good point there. If you bought the Ultimate Edition, there's no harm in playing this. It adds some neat guns and includes House Va'ruun. However, if you're going to buy this for $30, it's best to steer clear, because I finished the DLC and legitimately thought, oh, that's it. Last one here, because before I'm just beating a dead horse. Shattered Space brings a unique allure to the game with its new areas to explore and interesting narrative possibilities. However, despite its initial appeal, it's plagued with issues that impact both immersion and value. The expansion story feels isolated from the broader game. Once you complete it, there's no mention of it when joining the Unity. This is something I talked about in my review. You don't get any sort of ending consequence from it. For such a large edition, the oversight feels like a missed opportunity to add to the depth and cohesion of the multiverse. Content-wise, it feels overpriced. If you're interested, wait for a Steam sale before committing. House Va'ruun, depicted as a menacing faction, instead feels like a fragmented, misguided collective with limited purpose. Their portrayal doesn't quite capture the intimidating presence they were intended to bring to the game.
Yeah, House Va'ruun doesn't make sense. I talked about this, but this is, again, a great point of just how poor the story building is. House Va'ruun has this magical thing called zealots. They're religious zealots. Doesn't matter what kind of zealots, honestly. They're not even sure if they're actually, like, religious zealots. But in any case, they're zealots. Do you know what happens in real life 100% of the 100% of times this has happened? Uprising of a certain kind of zealous belief that is combative? Well, the first people that get killed are literally the people right there where they started, in their hometown, in their home city, and closest places. So the idea that House Va'ruun has zealots, yet House Va'ruun is not full of zealots because they're the only ones standing, doesn't make sense. If zealots emerge from anything, the first people that are gonna get killed are the people that they emerged. They're not gonna let the non-zealots, non-people who think like don't think like them alive. Okay, so the fact that House Va'ruun zealots exist doesn't make any sense in the first place. It's just stupid.
Loot is unimpressive. The ability to acquire additional copies of Va'ruun weapons is convenient, but it doesn't compensate for the lack of genuinely exciting or rare items. Also, the melee mechanics feel counterintuitive. While Bethesda may have intended to make melee more impactful, teleporting enemies make this approach more frustrating and rewarding. There was also...
Yeah, and it's hilarious. They took the worst type of enemies ever designed in any game, aka enemies that teleport when you shoot them to a random location, and then you need to just frustratingly find them. That is such a wildly insane choice. It is commonly known as one of the worst mechanics in gaming. Okay, and second to that is obviously enemies that use heals and you can't interrupt them, and then you need to kill them effectively a second time. Okay, but how? How did they do this?
Also, a review that I skimmed through earlier that mentioned teleporting enemies was frustrating. I bought this expansion because I wanted to see where the story would go, but it's clear Bethesda needs a reality check. They need to reevaluate their design decisions and shake off the "it just works" mentality that has grown tiresome. A bit of honest self-reflection and return.
The only surprising thing about these reviews is that Bethesda stopped responding to people and saying, "Have you tried to play the game correctly, dipshit?" Because that's what they did at the start. People said this is boring, and their response was, "Well, have you tried to play it correctly? Huh? Huh?" God, I hate this. It's just the worst. In any case, that was hilarious. Mr. Matty plays. Starfield is a disaster. Bethesda is dead, and have a nice day. Bye bye.